On March 26, 1992, John Forsythe was on Later with Bob Costas, part 2 of his interview. First one's mostly about his baseball announcing days and early radio acting days. Part 2 is far more interesting. It starts off talking about Bachelor Father, Mary Tyler Moore, Linda Evans, who became his wife on Dynasty years later. Talks about playing in Cold Blood with Robert Blake and all kinds of good stuff. Sorry this is late, but you can see the guys behind me were working on the electricity. It came back on. Thank God. I feel like crap. Not having electricity sucks, man.
Thanks for staying up later. We were enjoying our conversation with John Forsythe, decided to carry it over into another program, but we're going to begin here with Bachelor Father, which was the late 1950s program where you played the playboy Bentley Gregg, and your niece comes to live with you. Her parents have died, and you're in charge of this 13, 14-year-old girl. An interesting aspect of this was it was on all 3 networks, not simultaneously, but at one time or another, CBS, NBC, ABC.
Yes, I think it's unique because of that. I'm not sure that it's a really complimentary thing, because I think we were shunted from one network to another in the 5.5 years that we were on. They had different system then. The hour belonged not to the network, but it belonged to a sponsor who would take it over. Paul Hahn from the American Tobacco Company had an hour on, I think we opened on, we opened on CBS. And that hour belonged to the American Tobacco Company. And they put what they wanted put in there. For example, we shared the hour for one whole year with Jack Benny. Or maybe it was 2 years, I can't remember, but it was so long ago. That's because both those shows were owned by the American Tobacco Company. And wherever American Tobacco moved, we moved with them. And of course, it was a confusing thing working. Our being on one week with Jack Benny, he being on the next week. But it enabled me to have him on my show occasionally. I think he was on once or twice. And it was a great treat to have him on the show, of course.
And that was something that in the early days of television would happen from time to time. And almost all these sitcoms were set in sort of an unspecified Midwestern location, some town called Springdale or Midville or something like that, in a suburban situation. But then a really famous person would drop by and just happened to be...
In Springdale.
Right, in Springdale. It happened to be Bentley Gregg's pal, or just happened to be the Dr. Stone's friend on the Donna Reed show. So, you know, there would be the Carl Peterson kid on the Donna Reed show playing catch with Willie Mays. Willie just happened to be in town. Jack Benny just happened to drop by to say hello to his friend Bentley Gregg.
That's funny, but it's true. I guess you discount those kind of things. But when you see people of that kind of eminence come on the show, you don't connect it up with the kind of ridiculous phoniness of the circumstances that supposedly surrounded it.
The guy who played your housekeeper was an actor named Sammy Tong.
Yes.
And in the show, his name was Peter Tong.
Yes.
Why couldn't he just be Sammy Tong?
When we redo it...
Boy, there's a hard-hitting question. You think we're not getting to the bottom of stuff that concerns you, Mr. and Mrs. America?
You sure know how to get to a guy. The real distinction about Sammy Tong was that we hold that as a very, very important part of a great change in television, because we were the first ones to use an Asian in a comedy part. You've all been Japanese aviators, you know, who peered over the side and dropped bombs, or they were detectives. But to make him into a comic, and he was a wonderful, wonderful comic on our show, was an innovative thing. The other thing was that we were the first show that had the one parent kind of situation. So I was torn between having all those beautiful young ladies in my house and having a 13-year-old and had to attend to her problems as well. that brought about one very interesting condition. I would have the young ladies in the house, and I would wine and dine them, and there would be some kind of romantic arrangement, hopefully. But the girls' bedroom was right about where that door was, about 6 feet away. And all at once, we decided, you know, that's perilously close to this kind of activity. To have this 13-year-old, we have to do something about it. So we had to change, rebuild the whole house, or move. So we decided to move to another house.
So in the plot line of the show, they moved?
Yes, yes, we did. And all because of the sensitivity of having this little 13-year-old within earshot of what was going on.
So they built like a carriage house to put her in? This guy, Bentley Gregg, as I remember, was having a good time.
He was a swinger. and among the beautiful ladies that I had was, had in the house, people like Barbara Eden and Mary Tyler Moore.
Yeah.
And, of course, we had a number of stars that we introduced in the show, one of them being Ryan O'Neal, Jimmy Boyd. We had a pretty good record for that. And, of course, a tall, slender, lovely lady that you may have admired at some time in your life, Linda Evans. She was a 15-year-old, and she came in, and since I owned a piece of the show, I used to sit in on some of the casting sessions, because it was interesting, too, sitting in on the casting session with all those lovely ladies. And Linda came in. She was knobby-kneed, skinny, tall, little 15-year-old, but she had remnants, and you could see the fact that she was going to grow into quite a remarkable-looking girl. She was grossly underdeveloped, but I thought she was so pretty, and she was going to play a girl who was a friend of my niece's who had a crush on me. And that's how Linda and I met. Subsequently, many, many years later, when I had been signed to do Dynasty, and there was a party, and they brought her over to meet me, and I said, Linda Evans, my, how you've grown. And she never forgot.
And you had not seen her or talked to her in all those many years?
In all the 25 years. She's playing a girl, a friend of my niece's, and now playing my wife. It was quite a remarkable switch.
Did you play Blake Carrington pretty much tongue-in-cheek?
No. I patterned him after Lou Wasserman, a guy that I have great admiration for. As you know, the head of MCA, who has been a close friend of mine and a big benefactor of mine all my life, who was a man of tremendous integrity, very tough about business, murderously firm in his office, but very warm and loving and attentive to his family and his friends. So I pretty much patterned it after him.
But you didn't see it in some way as kind of high camp, this primetime soap?
No, there was enough high camp going on with Joan Collins and Alexis, you know. I played it pretty straight. And as a matter of fact, I was determined to show the audience, and I think I convinced the producers finally after a long time, that this was a man who was a collector of things. He collected companies, football teams, oil wells, everything. But the biggest jewel in his collection was his wife, was Linda Evans. And he didn't want any other women. That's not what he wanted. He wanted the things that a powerful man like that feels added power with, which was the companies and the enterprises that he could put together. Because they wanted me to be involved with other women at various times. And some of them were very, very attractive, too, like Ally McGraw was one. But I resisted that, and I think, in part, that was part of the strength of the show, that you felt that at the core of the show here's this couple who cared a great deal for each other.
cast you in The Trouble with Harry.
Yes.
Shirley MacLaine was in that?
Shirley MacLaine was her first picture. Hitchcock, amazing, extraordinary man. The man who was in charge of everything. He would sit, he always wore a dark suit, black tie, and a white shirt. He could be in the jungle, and he would still wear the same. He once told me that he only had same color, blue, very dark blue suit and white shirts. He said he had a flat in New York, and he had some kind of a flat in London, and he said, but they were all the same suits. But they were marked, and one was slim, one was not so slim, one was fat. They're all the same suits in different kind of sizes to fit his proportions for the moment. But he was a remarkable man. He was funny, he was droll, he was an interesting guy. Knew everything that was going on the set, everybody's job, perhaps better than they knew it. I must tell you one further Hitchcock story, even if you cut it, because it may be a little wrong.
Cut one of your stories, John?
You may have to, but I'm going to tell it to you anyway. He said he was making a picture called Lifeboat, and he said the cameraman on the picture, he said, was a very, very fussy, touchy fellow. And it all took place in a lifeboat about 15 feet long, and they had numerous characters in the lifeboat. Never got out of the lifeboat. And one of the characters in it was a woman acted by Tallulah Bankhead, who was one of the great women of the American theater, but a little on the wild lunatic side. The cameraman came up to him one day as he was sitting in the chair, and he said, yes, what's the problem? And the cameraman said, did you see the dailies? Dailies being yesterday's work. He said, no, I haven't seen the dailies. What's the matter? He said, well, it's Miss Bankhead. He said, Miss Bankhead is... He said, I don't know what we're going to do, Mr. Hitchcock. He said, easy now, easy. What's the problem? He said, well, he said, you know, I got the camera down high, I got it low, I'm trying to get a variety of different shots. He said, and when I'm down low like this and the shooter, he said, she doesn't wear any pants. And he said, when I'm down low like this, he said, it's a big problem. He said, you can see everything. Hitchcock said, oh. He said, well, I don't know rightly whether this is a problem for wardrobe, makeup, or hairdressing.
Well, congratulations to you. Good night.
We may be off the air.
Okay, I called General Electric. They're all asleep over there. So I assume they haven't cut the power, at least not intentionally. So we're still on the air, which brings us to In Cold Blood. And my own blood ran cold a short time ago, as a matter of fact. But the Truman Capote classic made into a film, and you play the detective who tracks these murderers down.
Yes. I was interested in being in that movie and in any movie that would give me a variety of things to play, because I hate to be pigeonholed the way they do in California. If you're in a situation comedy, you're a comedian the rest of your life. If you're in a dramatic piece and you do well in that, you never get to play comedy. Yeah. They say, well, he's that, he can't play that. So what I was trying to show, that I had some kind of versatility as an actor. In Cold Blood gave me an opportunity to do that. It was, as you know, a monumentally compelling drama.
Hey, that's what it's feeling alive, except for killers.
It was so good that Truman Capote came on the set one time, and as aggressive as Truman Capote was about his work, he never changed a comma of the thing after Richard Brooks had written it, which was a great tribute to Brooks. Because very, very often a writer who does as successfully as Truman Capote did in the book arena And when it does get transcribed into film terms, they get a little upset about it. I'm sure he was not very happy about Breakfast at Tiffany's, but he was enormously happy about In Cold Blood.
Talking about not being pigeonholed, you were in a movie with Al Pacino where you played a judge, and he winds up with some pictures that have you in like stockings and a garter belt, and there's a naked woman, and...
Oh, yes. It was called And Justice for All. And it was another one of those opportunities to work with a wonderful director, Norman Jewison, and in a different kind of a thing. Play a bad man. If you sugarcoat it by having a Fred McMurray or a Bill Holden or a guy like me who's played all the, what I call smiling Jack parts, all the nice guy parts, he is a bad man, but the audience doesn't know it until the end of the picture. It makes it a very, very telling kind of thing. The audience hates you more than they would hate ordinarily.
Like McMurray in Double Indemnity.
Exactly, yes. So and I was very good in the part. I'm a good bad man.
And you told one of our producers that you thought that playing that role with Pacino in Justice for All led to the Blake Carrington part in Dynasty.
Exactly.
How so?
Well, there was another case. They said, well, John Forsythe, he's a good actor, but he's a light comedian, isn't he? And they brought forth the picture for the producers, my agents did, for them to see, and they were overwhelmed with the fact that I could do dramatic stuff. When in reality, I've been a member of the Actors Studio. I've done Arthur Miller's plays on Broadway. It's ludicrous to be pigeonholed in that fashion. So I think one actor may have a facility for more of one thing than another, but a good actor can really generally do both, comedy and drama.
Now, in your new TV show, The Powers That Be, which is a Norman Lear show, you play this senator guy, and this show has received generally very good reviews. I think Tom Shales was kind of wishy-washy about it in the Washington Post, but for the most part, the reviews have been good. And a lot of people think that your senator is more or less modeled after Ronald Reagan, and the wife is Nancy.
I don't think so. I think I, for one, I tell you, have patterned this guy on a lot of senators and politicians that I've known. For example, during the Kennedy administration, I did a lot of work in Washington. I did a lot of USIA work, United States Information Agency work, narrating things and acting in their things. And I was invited by Ed Morrow, who was the head of USIA at that time, to various parties. So I could pretty much observe all these guys at their work and at their play. And the man that I play on Powers That Be is pretty representative of all politicians, with some notable exceptions, of course.
In the first episode that I saw, there was a little tilt of the head thing and a little kind of almost a will, you know? There was almost a Reagan thing there.
I do that myself, you know?
Well, I really enjoyed this. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Bob. Pleasure being with you.
Thanks. See you later.
Bye, angels.